Story 1, The Gas Station Stranger. It started like any other night. I worked at a rundown gas station off Highway 72, middle of nowhere. Nothing but cornfields, old barns, and a 2-lane road that stretched into endless darkness. The graveyard shift was mine, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Most nights were quiet. Truckers came in for coffee. Couples stopped for gas. Sometimes a drunk wandered in for cigarettes. But that night, everything felt wrong. The buzzing overhead lights were dimmer than usual, flickering like dying fireflies. The air was heavy, humid, almost suffocating. Even the crickets outside had gone silent. And I swear I felt watched from the moment I clocked in. Around 1 a.m., the bell above the door chimed. I looked up expecting the usual, maybe a trucker in a worn hat. Instead, it was a man I'd never seen before. Tall, thin, dressed in a faded hoodie despite the sticky summer heat. He moved slow, too slow, like every step was deliberate. His head never turned toward the snacks or the cooler or the register. His eyes stayed locked on me, unblinking. I forced a smile. "Evening. What can I get you?" He didn't answer, just walked past the counter and down the far aisle. His footsteps were wrong. They didn't echo like normal shoes on the tile. It was softer, like bare feet. My stomach tightened. Something told me this wasn't a regular customer. Minutes passed. He never came to the counter, just lingered in the aisles. I could see the top of his hood moving between shelves. Slow. Too slow. I cleared my throat. "We close at 6, man. If you need something, grab it now." Nothing. No answer. The silence pressed harder against my ears. Then knock. 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 I froze. The sound came from behind me, from the stockroom door. I turned, half expecting another customer had slipped in. But when I opened the door, nothing. Just boxes. Empty shadows. When I closed it again, he was gone. The hooded man. The aisle was empty. I spun around, hard hammering. And then I saw him, right outside the glass door, standing perfectly still in the parking lot, head tilted like a broken doll. The bell above the door had never chimed. He hadn't walked out. So how the hell was he outside? I locked the door instantly. My fingers fumbled on the key. But when I glanced back, he was gone again. The parking lot stretched empty under the dim yellow lights. No cars. No footsteps. Just silence. I tried calling my manager. The phone didn't even ring. Just static. Like someone breathing directly into the receiver. My skin crawled. Something whispered on the line, low, almost unintelligible. But I caught 3 words clear as day. "Behind you, now." I dropped the phone. The bell above the door chimed. My breath caught in my throat. The door was still locked, but the chime went off anyway. And when I turned, he was back. Inside, the man stood only a few feet away, closer than he had ever been. I could see his face now under the hood. Except, it wasn't a face. It was smooth, featureless, like pale, stretched skin over a skull. And still, those eyes. I swear I could feel them drilling into me, though there were no pupils, no irises. Just empty sockets. He raised one hand. Fingers impossibly long, bending like they were broken. He pointed at me. And then he whispered my name. Not loud. Not even audible in the normal sense. I felt it in my head. Inside me. I bolted. Ran into the stockroom, slamming the door. I pushed a mop bucket and boxes in front of it. My chest heaved, lungs burning. And that's when I saw the smear on my arm. Blood. Dark. Sticky. Fresh. But I wasn't hurt. Not a single cut. I wiped it against my shirt, trembling. And as I did, I heard his voice again. "Come. Oh, closer. You're already mine." The stockroom door rattled. Once. Twice. Then silence. I thought maybe, just maybe, he was gone. Minutes dragged like hours. Finally, I dared to move the boxes and open the door. The gas station was empty. Dead quiet. Everything exactly as it had been. Except for one thing. On the counter where I had been standing before was a smear of blood. A handprint. And it wasn't mine. And that's when I realized the blood on my hands wasn't mine. Story 2. The office elevator. I used to work late. Too late. The kind of corporate job where you never see daylight and live on vending machine coffee. Our office sat in a glass tower downtown, 15 stories tall, though our company only occupied the first 5. My boss loved sending last-minute emails. That night, it was already past midnight when I finally packed my bag. The cleaning crew had gone. Security guards were nowhere in sight. The office was mine alone, dead silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights. I headed for the elevators. Usually I took the stairs. But after 12 hours of staring at spreadsheets, I was too drained to care. I pressed the call button. Ding. The doors slid open. Empty. Just the faint smell of steel and cleaning solution. I stepped inside, hit L for lobby, and leaned back against the wall. The elevator jolted down like normal. But then, it stopped. Not at the lobby. Not even between floors. The panel above the doors lit up. 6. My chest tightened. There was no 6th floor. Our building had 5, offices, lobby, and basement parking. That was it. The doors slid open anyway. The hallway outside was wrong. Longer than it should have been. Lights flickered overhead. Walls painted a sickly yellow with peeling stains. And the smell, God, the smell. Rotten meat mixed with mold. I froze. My finger hovered over the closed door button. But then I heard it. Footsteps. Not fast. Not slow. Just steady. Coming down that endless hallway toward me. I couldn't see who it was. The flickering lights kept the far end in shadows. Then, movement. A figure stepped into view. It was a woman. At least I think it was. Her body was thin, almost skeletal under a torn gray suit. Her hair hung in tangled strands over her face. In her walk, it wasn't right. Her legs bent wrong like she was walking on broken bones. Each step cracked. Each step closer. I slammed the closed door button again and again. The elevator hesitated, like it wanted me to wait. Finally, the doors began to shut. But just before they sealed, her face lifted. I wish I hadn't looked. Her eyes were gone. Just black pits. And her mouth stretched too wide, lips tearing at the corners as she smiled at me. The doors closed, the elevator dropped hard. My stomach lurched. The panel blinked, 7, 8, 9, numbers that didn't exist in this building. I gripped the railing, praying it would stop. When it finally did, the display glowed, B2, basement level 2, another floor that shouldn't exist. The doors slid open. This time there was no hallway, just darkness. And in that darkness, breathing. What? Like something dragging air through water. Then, movement. Not footsteps this time. Crawling. Something dragging itself across the floor toward the doors. I hit lobby over and over, heart racing. The doors started closing. But just before they shut, a hand shot through the gap. Gray. Bloated. Fingers tipped with nails like knives. I screamed. Kicked at it until it slid back into the dark. The doors sealed, the elevator shot upward. Too fast. My ears popped. The numbers on the panel glitched, flashing random symbols and letters. Then, darkness. The lights inside went out. I was trapped in pitch black, the walls groaning as the elevator rattled like it would snap free of the cables. And over the grinding metal, I heard it again. The same footsteps. Inside the elevator with me. I couldn't see her, but I felt her. Closer, closer. Her breath crawled against my ear. Her voice rasped. You don't belong here. The lights snapped back on. I was on the ground, shaking, clutching my bag like a shield. The doors opened, and I was back in the lobby. Empty. Silent. Exactly as it should have been. I staggered out, refusing to look back. Swore I'd take the stairs forever. But as I pushed through the glass doors into the night air, I caught my reflection. In the lobby mirror behind me, she was standing, smiling, and that's when I realized I never rode that elevator alone. Story 3, the house across the street. I grew up in a quiet neighborhood. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone, lawns are trimmed, and nothing bad ever happens. At least, that's what we told ourselves. But across the street from my childhood home stood that house. Boarded windows. Collapsed porch. Paint peeling like sunburnt skin. No one lived there. No one could. People said it was condemned. But I always noticed small things. A curtain moving when no wind blew. Lights flickering in rooms that shouldn't have power. And at night, shadows in the windows. Last month, I moved back home to take care of my mother after her surgery. It was supposed to be temporary. But the longer I stayed, the more I realized the house across the street hadn't changed. Still rotting. Still silent. Still watching. I'd catch myself staring at it through the blinds at night. The windows seemed darker than the rest of the street. Like they were swallowing the light instead of reflecting it. And then, one night, I saw it. I was up late, scrolling my phone in the living room. The glow from the screen was the only light. When I looked up, my heart froze. A face, peeking through the upstairs window of the abandoned house. Well, expressionless, eyes locked on mine. I jumped from the couch, yanked the blinds shut, and told myself I imagined it. Sleep-deprived hallucination. Had to be. But deep down, I knew better. The escalation. The next morning, I checked. The window was empty. No footprints in the dust. No sign anyone had been there. But that night, it happened again. Same window. Same pale face. Watching me. This time, I didn't look away. I stared back. Minutes passed. The face never blinked. Never moved. Until, slowly, the curtain slid shut that I told myself I wouldn't look again. But curiosity eats you alive. By the third night, I was standing at my own window waiting. Midnight came. And there it was. The curtain pulling back. That same pale face watching me. I wanted to believe it was some squatter, a prank, anything. So I made the stupidest decision of my life. I went across the street. The front door hung crooked, half rotten. I pushed it open, the smell hitting me first. Mold, decay, something animal. The floor creaked under every step. The living room was a skeleton of furniture, shredded wallpaper, and water damage. But it was the silence that unnerved me. Like the house swallowed sound whole. I crept upstairs. Each step groaned, dust swirling in the beam of my phone flashlight. At the end of the hallway, the window, the one I'd seen the face in, the curtain hung still. The glass was covered in grime. I stepped closer. My light flicked across the room. Empty. No furniture. No footprints. Nothing. Except the curtain. It was damp. Fresh. Like someone had just touched it. I leaned closer to the window, peering out at my house across the street. And that's when I saw it. Not my reflection. Not the faint outline of me holding my phone. But her. The pale face. Standing right behind me. I spun around, light shaking across the walls. The room was empty. But when I turned back to the glass, her reflection remained. And this time she was smiling. I bolted. Down the stairs. Out the door. Straight into the street without looking back. By the time I slammed my own front door shut, I was gasping for air. I yanked the blinds closed, locked every door, every window. And for hours I sat in the dark, phone clutched in my hand. Waiting. Praying. Finally, exhaustion pulled me under. When I woke, sunlight filled the room. I almost laughed at myself. It had to be in my head. Until I saw the blinds. The ones I had shut. The ones I had locked tight. They were open. And across the street, the abandoned house window was empty. But on my own glass, faint and greasy, were handprints. Pressed from the inside. And that's when I realized the house across the street didn't want me watching it. It wanted in. Story 4, the night shift at Hollow Creek. I've worked late night shifts for years. Gas stations, warehouses, diners. If it's after midnight, I've probably had a paycheck there. But nothing messed me up like the diner job in Hollow Creek. It was a small roadside place. Chrome counters, neon lights buzzing, always smelling like burnt coffee and grease. Most nights it was dead quiet. A trucker here, a cop there. But after midnight, the real weirdos came out. I thought I'd seen it all. Until that night that IT started simple. The lights flickering harder than usual. The jukebox turning itself on and off, always stuck on some old static-filled track. I figured it was old wiring. But then came the phone call. The diner had one landline mounted to the wall behind the counter. It never rang. Not once in the 3 months I'd worked there. At exactly 3:12 a.m., it rang. The sound cut through the silence so sharp I nearly dropped the coffee pot. I picked it up, trying to sound calm. Hello? Hollow Creek Diner. Static. Then, a voice, whispering, dragging out my name. Not sir. Not employee. My name. I froze. Who is this? More static. Then laughter. Oh, guttural. Not human. I slammed the phone down. But it rang again. This time I didn't answer. I just stared. The ringing didn't stop. 30 seconds. A minute. 2 minutes straight. Finally, I yanked the cord from the wall. Silence. But when I turned back, someone was sitting in one of the booths. A man. Or what looked like one. Long coat. Wide-brimmed hat pulled low. I hadn't heard the door open. Hadn't heard footsteps. He just appeared. Sorry, we're closed, I said, voice shaking. He didn't respond. Didn't move. Didn't even breathe. I stepped closer. His face was hidden in shadow. But I swear, his mouth stretched into a grin. And then, without a sound, he was gone. The booth was empty. That I told myself I was hallucinating from lack of sleep. But the diner wasn't done with me. At 3:33 a.m., the jukebox started playing again. But the record didn't spin. And the song, it wasn't music. It was the sound of screaming. I backed away, heart pounding, when I saw movement outside. Through the neon glow, shapes gathered in the parking lot. Not people. Not exactly. Tall. Too thin. Heads tilted at wrong angles. They circled the diner. But the moment I blinked, they vanished. By 4 a.m., I was ready to walk out. Forget the paycheck. Forget the job. But the doors wouldn't open. I twisted the locks. Shoved. Nothing. It was like the building itself had sealed me in. Then the phone rang again. The cord was still ripped out of the wall. But it rang. I answered without thinking. And a voice said, "Look behind you." I spun. Every booth. Every stool. Every table. Full. Dozens of figures sat there. Some in coats. Some in rags. Some with faces I recognized. Faces of regulars who'd stopped coming by weeks before. All staring at me. Silent. And then as one they smiled. The lights went out, and when they came back on, every booth was empty. Except mine. Because I was sitting there, staring back at myself. That you've heard my stories. For different nights. For different places. But the truth is, they're all the same. Because horror doesn't only live in graveyards or haunted mansions. It doesn't always wear claws or fangs. It doesn't even need the dark. It lives in the quiet gas stations where strangers wait for you. In the empty schools where the halls whisper your name. In the houses across the street that should be abandoned, but aren't. In the diners where the clock hits 3 a.m. and nothing is what it seems. Evil doesn't hide in shadows. It hides in the ordinary. In the places you drive past every day. In the people you wave to, never realizing their smile is just a mask. And when it wants you, it doesn't knock. It waits, patient, watching, until you finally notice it staring back. So remember this the next time you convince yourself you're safe. That sound outside your window, that face in the corner of your eye, that voice on the other end of the phone. It isn't your imagination. It's already here.